My name is Austin J. Haines. I am based in the greater Philadelphia area of the United States.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Herstory TV and the Herstory podcast. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Wellington, New Zealand. And I am graced with the presence of yet another interesting gentleman who has come to our platform to share. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Thank you so much, Gertrude. My name is Austin J. Haines. I am based in the greater Philadelphia area of the United States, just outside of Philadelphia, in a little town called Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And I just turned the big 50 last month.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Yes, I feel great.
So you talk about stories. Tell us what pivotal time your story took a turn.
Yes, first of all, I thank you so much for this platform that you built. I'm honored and humbled to be here with you today to talk about this. My story is, there's so many depths to it, but there was a point in my life when I had a series of circumstances that happened, and I basically said my life was over. It's one thing to say the words, but it's another thing to believe it. And at that time, I believed that to be true. But through the grace of God, through a lot of the components that I build into a Flashpoint, which we'll hear about that, is that the turnaround is possible in every circumstance. No matter how low, no matter how dark, no matter how hopeless, there's always a light that flickers, even if we can't see it. And therein lies the really, I would say, the birth of the turnaround story is when we, as the experiencer, can't see or feel it in the moment. Does that make sense?
So you say that there is always a flicker. Now, for most people, when they're in the middle of a storm, you can't see it. You don't see the hope. How did you see it? How did you identify it? How did you follow that flicker? Give us a bit more detail.
So my father was in the war. He was in the Vietnam War, and he passed away in January of 2018. What I didn't know is that he had a man die in his arms. But I did know that he had been in some of the most difficult, challenging situations that anyone can be in going through a war. My dad had a lot of challenges, but I tell people that, especially with their parents, you don't always get the parents that you want, but you get the parents that you need. In that moment, when I was at that lowest point, my dad looked me in the eye and he said, "Your life is not over." I believed him because although I didn't fully embrace it when he said it, knowing that the background and what he had lived and experienced in his life, it had more credibility with me. And that's a key moment in my turnaround, because had that not happened, I wouldn't be here. So the first thing I would say in a turnaround is there's somebody, and even if it may not be family or friends, you might feel alone or isolated, but there's always somebody, and it could even be a stranger that you don't even know that says something at the right time. It's almost like somebody that was divinely placed, and you can't explain it, but it's that flicker, and it usually comes. That flicker usually comes by way of another person.
It's interesting that you talk about these connections that we have with people. The philosophy that I love to share is an African philosophy called Ubuntu. Literally translated, it says a person is a person through other people, that we are reflections of each other. And when you are fully present to people, they don't cross our paths by mistake. So I have had one of those spirit-led lives where magic happens wherever I go. But I am a sum total of every single human being that has come into my life. So thank you for bringing that up. It's very, very true. It's when you're present, that's when you see it. But a lot of times you're so focused on the crisis, on what it is you're trying to deal with, you don't see them when they come. And it could be somebody who's right in front of you, like your father.
It's so true. And I would love, to tell you I was present, but I really wasn't. I was, because there was other things that had gone on with me, early childhood stuff that I was consistently living in a state of lack of worthiness, if you will, or unworthiness because of situations. So this situation was just a major, it was a catastrophic thing that basically pulled me deeper into that there was something wrong with me. And the process was a long one for me. And I tell people, and even in the book, I took the long road, but I'm still going to end up on time, and so are you. And that means that regardless of what other people's lives present, and regardless of what someone else's journey, the one thing that we want to avoid is comparing ourselves with their journey, saying, I should be there, I should have gone through this, or this should have happened differently. And I lived in that state for a very long time. And it's a state that I don't recommend anybody live. As a matter of fact, if you're there, we want you to move out right away, get into a different state, because there's a better way to live. And it's through that presence that you just discussed, where your true power lies, the ability to embrace what has been, to embrace what is, so that you can consciously create what can be.
So if you were to go back to the younger you, that young person who was struggling in the middle of the storm, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you give us?
One is embrace what has happened. Nothing changes unless you embrace what has fully happened. A lot of times
and by embrace, are you talking about fully accepting that you are at a certain point in your life? Just elaborate on that a little bit.
Embracing doesn't necessarily mean accepting. Acceptance is the fruit of embracing. If I can allow myself to embrace what has happened, I'm not in a state of this shouldn't have happened to me. The embracing will lead me to acceptance. And that road, that journey can be, it could be, short, it could be a month, it could be decades for some people. They won't embrace what has happened, which blocks acceptance. So for me, younger self, embrace this. Number 2, what are you going to do differently? Like, that's the turning point. Is the decision that you're going to live differently, that you're going to make immediate changes. You're going to do whatever it takes to continue that turnaround. And then number 3 is believe in yourself. Go deeper in that the divine has put a imprint on your soul. There's something deeper. And if you can't believe in yourself, believe in source, believe in God, believe in creation, that everything in creation is meant to sing its purpose, your purpose, my purpose. And that belief is in everyone. It's there. And for me, it wasn't. So there are the 3 things is to fully embrace it, so that you can get to acceptance. And then in that turnaround, it's got to be a resolute decision. It's because my journey took a long time. I still was unconscious for a long time. Mm-hmm. And that's why the closer you can bring those together through awareness, which is this discussion right now, then you can get to that belief in yourself and trust in yourself and your creator.
So the point of awakening, we talk about becoming awake. A lot of people sleepwalk through life in a haze, really, not fully awake and aware of what's going on around them. Can you share an exact incident, something that happened that snapped you out of the sleepwalk?
I love that question. I love that question. There's one situation that I had that was a dramatic shift. And that was, I say where you're coming from is more important than where you're going to. And whenever I say that, it's a paradoxical statement. It confuses people because everybody is future and destination driven. But if I come from lack right now in my personhood, wherever I arrive to, what's going to be there? There's the same thing. The only Zen you bring at the top of the mountain is the Zen that you bring there. The only peace I get from my family is the peace that I bring there. So for me, I was coming from a place of lack. I was coming from a place of to prove because of the lack. And I had a moment where my earliest memory was of my parents fighting, battling, bitter divorce. And I distinctly have a memory of that happening. But through a process that I went through, I learned through this process that there was a moment before that I had forgotten, where everything was perfect. Once I had that shift, where I was coming from started to change. And once where I was coming from changed, now I'm bringing something different into my existence. And that's why it's funny when I do my live events, I tell people, what if you could change your past? And they say, well, what did I sign up for here? How can I change my past? And then we have these glasses that we bring out. And the idea is that when you see your past differently, it changes.
Yeah.
Isn't it true?
It's very true.
So
it's all about the perception at which you're looking back and how you have got to this point. It's interesting. Exactly. It's also, I kind of hear that one really has to take full responsibility to what you are bringing to situations, because the only thing you can change is you. You can't change anyone else. You can't change the situation in most instances. But what you can do is change how you perceive it and how you see it.
Absolutely. Amen to that. When I was 25, thank God it wasn't sooner, but thank God it wasn't later, is when I realized that it was me. My rise and my fall, my whatever was going to be was up to me. And it's cliche because you hear people say it all the time. Even when you're growing up, you hear it. But if you're not ready to receive the message, you're not going to get it. And that's why what you're doing here with the podcast is so important, because I tell people all the time, I go back to the basics. It's not what we think we know. It's the way we live that shows what we know.
So then let me take you into your future. If time was an illusion and your past, your present, and your future existed on the same timeline and you could literally teleport between, you were to have a conversation with the future you at 80, 90 years old, sitting on your rocking chair, based on what life has taught you, what would you say?
A life well lived. I've already imagined this and what I would feel, and just what I talk about is, because people talk about presence, but it's okay to reflect. Regret, we want to avoid regret, but reflection is powerful. And when you can reflect back and recap moments in your life, when you can see what you can't see today. You can see in the uncertainty when it makes no sense. It all makes sense at that point. And to really be present, in that 90-year-old, 100-year-old, whatever you want to call it, to just embrace life. And the way I liken it, it's a feeling of just incredible fulfillment, where you might cry. It's like this incredible feeling of that can only come from living a full life. And that means that I'm going to let life in. I'm not going to resist. I'm not going to avoid. I'm going to let life in. And that doesn't mean I'm careless. It just means as things come up, I embrace them. I let life in, because if I can embrace what has happened or what is happening, then I'm also blocking off all the joy and the great moments of life. And what I've found so far is that for most people, that the joy and there's so many great moments that we don't even see it. And one of the things I'll share with you is that, and I think about this often, this moment is perfect. But there's so many moments where things are perfect that people don't see it. So they seek something else, substance, people, escapism. And it's like T.S. Eliot said, we shall never cease from exploring. And in the end of our exploring, we shall arrive where we started and know it for the first time. And my heart is that people will get back to that present moment to know it for the first time, because a lot of people don't make it. They don't make it back there. They get lost. They take a wrong path and never recover. Yeah. And that's why I hope this reaches people, because there's so many blessings in life that if we could only see them, and then if we can see them in this moment, we come from a different place and we bring that into everybody we touch, we come in contact with.
So let's finish our interview with talking about the current crisis the world is in. The Chinese write the word crisis with two symbols. One stands for danger, the other one stands for opportunity. And I do believe humanity is in a crisis at the moment that can be turned into an amazing opportunity with what COVID-19 has gifted us with. What are you seeing as the gifts and the blessings that have come out of this experience?
First of all, I look at it as a cleansing, an opportunity for people to, I call it a collective life pattern interrupt. It's interrupted the masses, their life pattern.
Yes.
And what I've found mostly, and this is not unanimous, but mostly, is that this situation has accelerated the direction that people are already going in. If I'm doing good things, that was just accelerated. Yeah. If I'm doing bad things, that was just accelerated. If I'm on the fence and I'm left like, what just happened? That's my opportunity to choose to do something different, to change my life, to embrace this, to embrace the chaos, to embrace the unshakiness, because sometimes that's the ideal space for what's supposed to happen next.
Wow. Thank you for coming online today and gracing us with your presence and your knowledge and your insights. It's been really fascinating talking to you. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. The Herstory Circle is trying to bring change makers, thought leaders, to share their ideas, one story at a time, one person at a time, right across the globe. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another fascinating guest from a different part of the world. And Austin, words cannot express my gratitude for your presence today. Thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Bye for now, everybody. Take care wherever you are in the world.